What's going on? It's Thomas, and in this video I want to walk you through the exact 8 steps to generate $1,000 plus per day as a ClickBank affiliate. This is exactly what my students and myself are doing right now. So let's jump straight into it. We've got the fancy Google Doc with the extremely technical black highlighted hiding the actual real nuggets, but we're going to undo this as we go, just so you can't get ahead of yourself and you have to stay around to see every step. All right, step number 1, the most important part. This is the pinnacle, the biggest piece of the puzzle. You have to pick the right offer, and ideally you pick a killer offer, right? You need an offer that crushes. There's no two ways about it. If you're an affiliate, there's only so much we can control. We can control the ad. We can control the landing page. We cannot control the offer. As an affiliate, we have nothing to do with the offer. Not always the case, but most of the time. So here's what we're going to look at. My advice would be to start with proven VSLs. Now, my second advice would be to not go with an offer that's been out for a long time. We don't want something that's super scaled. We want something early, but we don't want to be first. We want to make sure that there are other affiliates promoting it. And ideally what we want to see is we see some super affiliates promoting it. You can often, find ClickBank affiliate IDs that you might recognize, that you might know, that you might have seen scaling other offers. That's a really good indicator that they've maybe got first dibs or early insight into a killer offer, right? So we want to look for proven offers, but we don't want to be looking in, the top 5 or the top 10 offers on ClickBank, because they're going to be super saturated. Now, that's not to say you can't take a small slice of the pie and make it work. But in reality, for me, I want offers that can scale, right? And it's just a lot harder to get those offers to scale when 20, 30, 50, 100 other affiliates are already scaling hard, right? So I want a newish offer. I want to be early, but I don't want to be first. And I also don't want to be last, right? So I'm looking for EPCs. This is a number that you need to get used to. If we're going to boil down everything into one metric that counts, it's EPC. It's just so much easier to just have the one metric be an EPC. Okay, it's a $2 EPC. I know I want to get cost per click for $1. Right? It just gives us so much simplicity in how we can navigate our campaign and our offer, right? So EPC is a very strong metric that we want to pay attention to. Yes, there are also extremely important metrics like conversion rate. Secondly, for me, conversion rate, I want a conversion rate of at least 1.5%. Okay. And then you also have AOV, but you can sort of work that out from your EPCs anyway. But AOV, again, it's going to differ, and we're going to have this balance, right? For me, I'm quite happy to have a low payout or a low AOV if I've got a high conversion rate, right? And the same could be said, I can have a lower conversion rate but a higher payout, and the balance is there, right? It balances out. So sometimes, I'm taking from one to, make sure I've got another, right? I either want a high conversion rate and a lower payout, or a higher payout with a lower conversion rate. Now, my advice, especially to those who are maybe beginning or newer to this, is go for the lower payout offers. You're going to get data faster. And being able to get data faster means you can optimize, you can see what's showing promise. If we were to just use a very quick scenario, if we had a $1,000 as our testing budget, and we spent that $1,000 on one offer that pays out maybe $200, and our CPA, our cost per acquisition, is $150. So we pay $150 to get a purchase that we get paid $200 for. Now with that $1,000, we're only going to be getting 6, nearly 7 conversions. It's not much. It's not a lot of data. We don't have any significant data there, right? However, if we had a payout that pays out $50, right, and our cost per acquisition is $30, right, that same $1,000, now we have 30 free conversions, right? So we have nearly 5x the amount of data compared to the higher payout offer. Meaning with that 30 free conversions, that data, there's a very good chance we can start to see pockets of profit forming. Maybe this avatar, maybe that ad, maybe iOS, maybe these hours, maybe this landing page, depending on what you're testing, right? So my advice would be look at lower payout offers with higher conversion rates, because you're going to be able to utilize media buying skills and data analysis, whatever the word is, way, way better and way easier. Okay. All right. Number 2. I don't know if there's a keyboard shortcut. I kind of wish there was, because this is going to really annoy me, but whatever. We're going to have this black square. Digital info products. All right. So inside of my community, inside of Ad Profits, I've been banging on about digital products for probably the last 3 or 4 months. I really do feel we see a massive trend on ClickBank, Buy Goods, Digistore, going more towards digital, which there's always been digital offers, info offers on these networks. And, you know, if we go back to 2019 and pre that, ClickBank was only digital offers, apart from Organifi, I think was the only sort of supplement offer. Then we had Leptotox, then Research, and then thousands of supplements have hit ClickBank, Buy Goods and alike in the last 5 years. Very few digital offers, apart from the manifestation and BizOps space. There's not been many health digital offers. However, you know, I really do feel that's where a lot of my attention has been these last, you could say, couple of years. I've had a lot of attention on digital offers in the men's health space. But now I'm solely running digital offers. I'm not running any supplements at the moment. I do want to test a couple, but right now I have no supplements running. Everything that I'm running right now, I have 5 different offers running. They are all info offers. They are all digital offers. And one of them I've just shared with my Ad Profits community that I tested, which is a new thing that I've introduced into Ad Profits, where I'm vetting offers. And I'll get onto that in a second. But digital offers are beautiful. With an around $50 to $70 is usually what you'll see for a lower ticket front end. Let's say sub $50, sub $40 as the front end price. You know, an AOV between $50 and $70, you can really hit good scale, really good scale. And I'll show you that in a second. All right, so let's have a pro tip. So pro tip, the fastest growth often comes from private offers. So these aren't listed on the marketplace, okay? If you were to look at the biggest and baddest affiliates right now on ClickBank, Buy Goods, etc., the majority are going to be running private offers. There's a reason. There's no competition, right? Less saturation, less people ripping your ads, okay? So these aren't listed on the marketplace. You're not going to find them unless you have existing leverage and connections, or you're inside a community like Ad Profits, where I've just, like I was saying just before, I had an offer, a health digital offer that I tested 2 weeks ago. In fact, we'll bring in my results here. So these were the results over 5 days. You know, straight off the bat, $1,000 plus every single day on those 5 days. I tested multiple avatars, which we're going to get into in a second. I tested multiple creatives, multiple landing pages, and ended up, if we bring this next one here, how do we do this? Let's have a look. So look at this. So these are my stats from inside ClickBank, right? So 2,000 hops or offer visitors, 2,100, 492 initial order form impressions or checkouts, 128 sales, slightly higher than this. I think I've missed a day off in this screenshot, which was a 6% conversion rate from offer visitor to checkout, 6%, which is insane. If we go back to, what we're looking for in terms of the, killer offers, conversion rate 1.5%, this is 6%. That's crazy. And that's with multiple avatars and multiple creatives. And it's not just off 3 or 4 sales. This is 128 sales, okay? 26% checkout order form conversion rate with 6,600 earnings. EPCs of $3.13. Again, we want EPCs of $2 plus ideally. Earnings per order, $51.69, which is your AOV or payout. And then refund rate of 1.7, okay? Solid stats. Really, really good stats. So what I did with this is part and parcel of what I'm doing in Ad Profits is I'm vetting offers. I know the biggest stumbling block, what I've seen recently from students and friends and people commenting on YouTube and Instagram is the offer. It's the hardest part, and rightly so, because it's also the part that we don't control, right? So finding the right offer, sometimes I've been through times where I've had to test 10, 15, 20 offers before I find one that sticks. Now, unless you've got quite a big budget, that's going to take a lot of money if you're going to test, let's say, $500 to $1,000 per offer. If we're testing 20 offers at $1,000 each, that's $20,000. How many people have $20,000 available to burn in order to find that winning offer? Not many, right? So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to vet offers. I'm finding private offers through my connections and my leverage, people that I know, vendors that I know, that can give us a private offer that isn't available anywhere else. It's not available on the ClickBank Marketplace, Buy Goods, Digistore, or anywhere like that. And my Ad Profits members get exclusive access to it for the time being, where we can all jump on and get things popping, right? So I shared inside of my Ad Profits community, I shared all of the ads that I was running, the avatars that worked. There were 2 out of 5 that crushed. I tested 5 avatars. 2 of them absolutely crushed. I shared the exact ad copy, the exact creatives, the exact landing pages. I tested 4 different landing pages. So all of this was shared inside Ad Profits, which now, this was shared yesterday, by the way, or the offer was shared a few days ago. People started running it yesterday. Again, you might not be able to see this, but this member got their first sale in 1 hour of launching. Solid offer. And you can see the conversion rate, 16% on this. Obviously, it's one sale and it's very few clicks. So we're not going to read too much into that. But then again, another guy is saying 116 hops, 5.17% conversion rate, which is insane. Never seen this before. First time of seeing this. Then what else we got? We've got another screenshot from somebody, another member. I know this is a bit of a plug for Ad Profits, but actually this is the same guy. So you can see there, 6 sales, 5% conversion rate, $401 in revenue, right? So really strong conversion rate and also AOV. $400 in revenue yesterday after a few hours of launching. It's not bad, right? This is easy on for $1,000 a day. Easy. And this is, this actual student's only been in Ad Profits a couple of weeks. So this is really exciting. Another screenshot from somebody who is running this as well. Same offer. This guy's running native traffic, which again, we have content on that inside of Ad Profits. Obviously the main focus is Facebook, but we do dabble with native. 8 sales, 2.7% conversion rate. So again, ticks those boxes. I think this guy's break even, so not profitable right now. But break even on native traffic is really solid because obviously you're running across potentially thousands of IDs, thousands of placements or widgets or whatever you want to call them. So very exciting stuff. As he whittles down, he's going to find a very profitable campaign. And then another conversion rate. Actually, this is mine as well. Sorry, reading the same conversion rate. But anyway, you get a picture, right? I don't want to plug too much of what's going on inside of Ad Profits, but this is part and parcel of what I want Ad Profits to be. I want it to be, a crazy valuable community. Not only where you get community, where we've got, by the way, some of the biggest affiliates on ClickBank, two that have been the biggest in Q1 and the biggest in Q2. So two of the biggest affiliates this year in the community with us, sharing stuff, insights. But then also we've got the education, we've got courses, we've got weekly calls, and of course, access to private offers, utilizing my leverage and who I know to be able to give us access to stuff like this, which I am testing and vetting with my own money to prove concepts, to prove that this offer has legs, so you don't have to. So I think it's super valuable. Again, sorry about the plug, but it is what it is. Right, let's move on to step 2. Seeing as we're 16 minutes in, we've not even, we've only gone through step 1. We've got 8 of these to get through. So next step, right? We find the offer. We can do that through Spy Hero, through Marketplace, through CB Snooper, or through a community or mastermind or friends where you can access private offers, which would be my top tip. But then, we want to define 3 to 5 avatars. So I mentioned before, I shared my avatars with my students. I went through and showed exactly what I was running, the ad copy. In fact, I gave the ad copy in a resource sheet, ad copy, landing page templates from Convertri and creatives and everything else. And what I mean by avatar is it's an angle, okay? So it's who we're speaking to, a customer segment or a segment of the market. Now, people get confused here because an angle for me, and again, I think people have different connotations of what this means, but an angle for me is the overview, right? The overlying angle. The angle could be, for instance, grandma in a wheelchair, right? That's the angle. She can't walk because of whatever it is, right? But the avatar is, well, who is this person? What's her name? How old is she? These are demographics, right? But these are important to weave into our story, okay? But then we go deeper, and this is where the avatar really comes in. Because what triggers her, right? What triggers, her emotions? Where does she really feel the pain the most? Maybe it's she can't play with her grandkids. Maybe it's she can't go and watch them play sports or do drama or perform in shows or dances because she can't get up the stairs, or maybe there's no access for the wheelchair or whatever, right? Maybe she can't go out to the shops. What is it that triggers, right? A really good example that I had the other day that, again, I shared on, I think it was on our weekly call. We were looking at ads for a sciatica offer, and the ad had a image of a golfer with obviously pain in the back, and it looked like a good ad. But the story, the ad copy didn't marry up to it, okay? It wasn't relevant, which doesn't always matter, but it wasn't congruent. And my instant thought was, well, for me, and this goes into the avatar, I know there's some extremely, what's the word? I can't think, enthusiastic golf players, right? People who live and breathe golf, whatever you want to call it. And for me, that image would work really well if the story was about Frank. He's 64 years old. He plays golf with his 3 friends at least once a week, or did. They're in a WhatsApp group. They're always bantering. They're always, sharing stats, having digs at each other. You sucked yesterday. Beers after the, after the game or the course or whatever. And then, obviously now maybe he slipped a disc with a hard drive, in golf, a drive. He maybe went a little bit over, exaggerated the drive, slipped a disc, trapped his sciatic nerve, and now he can't play golf, right? So that was a long-winded story, but what triggers him? What triggers the emotions, the pain, right? And I'm not talking the physical pain from sciatica, because obviously that's important, but what triggers the mental pain? And for me, what I'm thinking is, well, when he sees, Alan, Dave and Terry in the WhatsApp group, who were all having banter without him, talking about the game that they just played, which was amazing. He's still in the WhatsApp group, but he's not playing. He can't sort of fall back into that banter. I think that would be a huge trigger. So that's the type of stuff I'm looking into. And we have this prompt sheet inside of Ad Profits that helps you sort of dig into that. But, that's really where we want to go with this, is like, what triggers him? What are the emotional pain points? What are the physical pain points? What are the day-to-day things that he can't do now because of sciatica or whatever it is, right? Because once we know those things, we can weave them into our story, into our creative, into our ad copy and our landing page. And that's where things really get strong. So let's uncover some of these bullet points. I really don't like this thing because I'm ending up saying everything without actually revealing it. All right, so, break the audience into clear groups with different pain points. And again, obviously, this is real generic, an overview. And there's only so much space that I can do and also so much time that I want to play into. But I just spent a few minutes there explaining what I mean by how we drill into this, right? Like the retiree could have been the golf player, retired, looks forward to his weekly golf session with the boys, has a beer afterwards in the clubhouse. Obviously can't do that now because his sciatica sort of immobilized him, right? Okay. So the reason why we do this is I don't know why I keep on leaving this bloody square, but each avatar that we run and test equals a new angle, right? Which equals another shot at finding a winning campaign. And that's what's really important, right? Because all too often when I go through spy tools, I see the same kind of generic copy. The same baking soda, the same apple cider vinegar, the same this, the same that. Don't get me wrong, those things can work and they clearly work because that's why people run them. But the thing is, if you're running exactly the same style or a very similar style of creative and copy as 1,000 other affiliates, then you just become a sheep amongst the flock. And that's not what we want to do. We don't want to be a sheep amongst the flock. We want to be able to stand out from the crowd. It's really freaking important. And like so often I see people just don't do that. And then they wonder why, the campaigns don't work. Well, aside from running a bad offer, it can be, well, you're just completely dependent on luck because you've got an ad that is the same as 999 other affiliates ads. And basically you're just crossing your fingers and hoping Facebook shows your ad to the right person at the right time, choosing your ad out of the thousands of other ads that look pretty much identical, right? So it's super important that we drill into these avatars. So pro tip, advanced affiliates don't just run one avatar. They scale by stacking multiple avatars on the same offer. So if we go back to the example that I shared where I had an offer, I tested a private offer with the foresight of wanting to share it with my Ad Profits community. I tested 5 avatars and each avatar had multiple creatives. And I was able to push a little bit harder on 2 of these avatars that really showed promise, right? So, I'm not just testing one avatar because if I test one avatar and it flops, and then I just decide that the offer was rubbish and I move on, I would never know if maybe it was just, instead of targeting, 75-year-old Sue, maybe I should have targeted 52-year-old, Deborah, right? Who's maybe, kids have just left to go to university. She's stuck in she's a little bit lost with herself. She's had a house of, 2 or 3 kids for the last 20 odd years and now they've flown the nest and she's you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to drill into stuff like this. I'm not using that as a specific example, but I'm just thinking in my head, this is how I want to get down. Like this is how I want to sort of drill into a market is like, what are they feeling? Like, what are they thinking? Like, how can I really sort of uncover certain pain points, emotions, triggers? Like, how can I do that? Right? That's really what I'm looking to do. And I want to test multiple avatars because it allows me to take multiple shots. If I'm just reliant on one avatar, and testing, again, like I'm sort of, leaving myself short if that avatar doesn't take off. If I have 5 avatars, I increase my chance of finding a winner, right? And quite often, you have no idea what's going to work, So like assumption, you shouldn't be assuming. The only time you can decide is when you have data to back it up. Like you cannot guess, you cannot assume, because, for me, pretty old and I'm definitely overweight, but I'm not 72-year-old Sue. I don't know how she thinks, right? So for me to be like, well, she's not going to connect with this. How do I know, right? Completely different market, right? So like the only time I can assume stuff is when it's completely relevant to me. I wouldn't go for that. Well, if that offer's not for me, then what right do I have to say that? Completely different markets. So don't assume. Always test and back it up with data before you make decisions. All right, let's uncover step 3. These highlights. All right, so once we've got our offer, once we've defined 3 to 5 avatars, the easiest way, by the way, I'm obviously skipping ahead of myself here, is to use AI, right? Now, for me, I do like to do it manually as well. So I will go through spy tools. I will look at other people's ads, not always in the same offer, by the way, and the same niche. And in actual fact, I found some of my best ideas for avatars by looking at what other people are doing and thinking, that's a really good scroll stopper, but there's no direct tie. Similar to that golf ad that I was just talking about with sciatica, where's the tie-in, right? Like there's no relevance. I can make this way better. And maybe this can be relevant to my knee pain offer, right? Okay, well, all right, now I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe this would be relevant to that. Okay, so that's where I get a lot of my ideas from. And then if I hit a stumbling block or I need more ideas, I go to AI and I use the prompt sheet that I was talking about, where we're able to sort of go back and forth with AI and really get some good ideas for avatars, right? Okay, so once we've got our avatars, again, I recommend 3 avatars for low budgets, 5 avatars if you got, a little bit more money to spend. I want to craft story-based ad copy now, right? So each of our avatars, we need some story-based ad copy. For those of you who've ran ClickBank style offers before, you'll know this is big. Like the story-based copy, really, really big. I hate this black square. Right, anyway, we want to write ads like stories, okay? We're not writing a sales pitch, right? We don't want our ad to look like an ad, okay? And I follow a very specific formula. And again, we go through this in Ad Profits quite often, where we start with the hook quite naturally. We then go into the pain, which is the story. And this is where we want to really relate to the avatar. So again, going back to like what triggers them, what are their emotions, right? What are the pain points? This is where we uncover this, right? So this is quite an in-depth and detailed part, is really exploring the pain. And what we want here is we want our avatar to be reading their own story, thinking, oh, wow, like this is me. This is exactly my story. It's like looking in a mirror, right? Then we go into the discovery. And this is how they discover the solution, right? And obviously a lot of the offers that we run are VSLs. So, we stumbled across a free presentation. Now, I think this is a really important part because quite often I see many ads out there that are all very similar or generic and the same. I bumped into my friend in the grocery store. I met my friend for coffee that I hadn't seen in like 17 years. And she looked like a skinny rat or whatever, right? Like this for me needs to be believable and it needs to be relatable. So like the way I like to sort of structure the discovery is, what would a person with prostate issues, like a man with prostate issues, like when are they most likely to be searching for a solution? And it's probably when they're sat on the toilet trying to squeeze pee out, right? And when could that happen? In the middle of the night, when they're most, when they're in the middle of the extremities, when the pain points are the most extreme, they're tired. This is the 4th time they've been to the toilet to squeeze out a drop. And I could imagine, I don't have prostate issues fortunately at the minute, but I could imagine a man with prostate issues that are quite severe in the middle of the night, they're probably doing a sit-down wee, right? why would you stand up for 10, 15 minutes when you're knackered? You'd probably sit down. Again, this is only me thinking. I'm just trying to put myself in the position. But naturally, one of the things that we do when we sit on the toilet or when we're doing something for 10, 15 minutes with, where we don't have an attention span anymore, we're on the phone, right? And maybe if we're in the middle of the extremities, we're looking up, Google searching, how do I freaking sleep with prostate issues, how to solve prostate issues, how to shrink my prostate, how to pee with prostate issues, all of these things, right? So if I was to weave that into my discovery, it was the fourth time I was sat on the toilet, it was 3:05 in the morning, the wife was sleeping in the other bed because she's so pissed off of me waking her up every time I get up, like this type of shit. Now it's relatable, right? Because this probably happens quite often. Then I stumbled across this men's health forum on page 4 of Google and, blah, blah, blah. Make it realistic. I think it's really important to do. Then we go into the results, right? And this is, I like a timeline. So I like, day 2, didn't really feel anything. So it's realistic again. Like how often are they going to do something and it's going to be instant, relief? Probably, minimal, very little, apart from if it's maybe a drug, medication, right? And this is what we're trying to get away from. This is part and parcel. This is a great angle as well, is to sort of be against big pharma, right? The drugs are costing you thousands of dollars a year. They're also giving you major side effects, etc. You're completely dependent on them. They're only hiding the symptoms and not addressing the root cause. These are all good angles to hit, right? But the results, I like to timeline it. And the first couple of days, didn't really feel anything. Day 3, first time I've peed freely, right? Or maybe not that soon, but you get the picture. We want to gradually build up to it over a few weeks because then it's more realistic. It's not going to happen overnight. This isn't a magic pill that we're selling, right? So we want to sort of, build that into them as well. And then the call to action, like urgent call to action. Again, spent a little bit of time on this bit, but this is probably one of the easiest ways to sort of structure your ads. And you could probably give it a similar framework to problem, agitate, solution, that PAS framework. Probably one of my favorite frameworks for story-based copy. All right, let's dive into the second part. So we also want to focus on emotions, right? People hate ads, but they love relatable journeys. And I see this a lot. Right, when you look at the comments in your ads, if they're completely bananas and just like apple cider vinegar or the same shit that they've seen so many times, they already know what type of ad this is. They already know what offer or type of offer this is promoting. It's got to be nothing special. And that's where you see scam, BS, bullshit, blah, blah, blah in the comments. People are aware. To keep on running those same ads is pretty stupid. So what I like to do is I like to weave in some real stories and make the creative suitable as well. And what I see is an insane difference, complete opposite. If I've got like a real, a visibly or what would be the word, visually real story, how someone turned their life around when, again, like this is way more explainable when I show you the ad, but obviously I'm not going to do that. That's inside of Ad Profits. But like for this story that we had or this offer that I've recently tested for Ad Profits, the comments on these ads were insane because for the 2 avatars that crushed, because they were like real life stories, right? Like how they've turned something around and people get behind that. Whereas if it's just like apple cider vinegar, baking soda, fucking, hydrogen peroxide or whatever it is. So, no, this is another one of these ads, right? So it needs to be relatable and not look like an ad. All right, pro tip, we also obviously want to keep it compliance safe. So we don't want to make crazy claims. And this is where story-driven copy can come in and play in nice because when we talk in first person, we're not promising anything for them, right? We're not saying you're going to cure diabetes. I actually saw a cure cancer ad recently, which is crazy, but we're not promising that, right? We're just giving our own personal testimonial style story of our own experience with the offer or the solution, right? And that's the whole point of it. All right, let's go into step 4. So build scroll stopping creative. Scroll stopping creatives seem like a little bit of a tongue twister there. The hook equals everything, right? And I'm sure for those who have seen this before or ran ads before, you know the hook's super important. The most important part of the ad, if you could argue quite easily, right? So let's take a look. Now, if you don't stop the scroll, nothing else matters. Like, you've missed that opportunity, right? Those eyeballs have gone elsewhere. So the hook has to stop that scroll, right? And you could, the thumbnail, the image, the opening line of text, the opening 3 seconds of the video, these are all hooks, right? So we want bold images, something that stands out, right? We want UGC style videos. I think personally are what perform best. You can do these quite easily with AI. There's 1,000,001 different ways of structuring your creative. There's some really, and this is what I look for, is I'm looking for ideas as well, is, what's catching my attention? And this is actually where my best avatars have come from as well, or the creatives for them. The ideas for the avatar have come from what catches my attention. How can I make this better? How can I weave this into my own stuff, right? UGC style videos are great. Weird pattern interrupts are great. The bottom line is you need to stand out. You cannot be the sheep amongst the flock. You have to stand out from the crowd. You really do. So your ad creative does not want to look like the other 999 affiliates, right? Because you're just completely dependent on look. You need to stand out. We've got some really good insights inside of Ad Profits that go through this in more depth. And we want to match the creative style to your avatar. So when I run my avatars, when I have my 5 different avatars, I'll maybe have 3 creatives per avatar, okay? And all 3 of those creatives are going to be closely related, relevant, and congruent to that avatar, right? So the golfer, I'm going to have 3 images that are going to be golf related, right? The new mom, like they're going to be images or videos related to, a new mom, right? I'm saying it American, new mum, mum, not mom. But anyway, right? So we want to match creative style to your avatar. I've got some shitty examples here, but one thing that I really like as an idea for video creative for skeptics or people that need a little bit more convincing is, I saw this actually on one of the spy tools recently. It was a talking head video. I think it was an AI Arcads or Creatify talking head, but the background was a Google search, and I can't remember what the search was, but it was like, side effects of gabapentin or whatever, like a prescribed drug, and obviously then leading into the solution of how the side effects of this drug are so lethal. It wasn't that, by the way. I just can't think of what it was exactly. It's a really good idea, right? To work out what are the most common objections or common problems with the common solution. So a common solution for neuropathy is gabapentin. It's a brand of medication, right? A prescription drug. So what are the side effects? And to have that on a screen record of Google, typing that in, looking through the results, highlighting certain things that are, probably quite dangerous, expensive, $2,000. It was GLP-1s. This was the ad. It was something about, how expensive are GLP-1s? And then it was saying $1,000 to $2,000 a month, but with health insurance, right? And then leading into whichever GLP-1 it was promoting. But then it was a talking head, switching sides, right? Super easy to sort of do this. Like, all of us have a phone that we can screen record us going on Google and typing in something and just highlighting certain words. And then we can all sign up to Arcads for whatever it is, $100 a month. And we can all input a voiceover, whether it's from 11 Labs or from Arcads itself, input our script, to basically, read out whatever you were reading out when you were going through the screen recording. So I think creatives are very easy to make at the moment. We've got so many tools. If you're not a creative person, I'm not a creative person at all, but I'm able to sort of make basic videos. I'm able to, make basic images, find images on Google or wherever, find content on TikTok or whatever, right? I'm able to do that. But obviously my preferred method is to outsource it to my creative team, which, obviously makes more sense for me. But if you can't afford creative teams or to outsource it, you're going to have to do it yourself. So I think, with the tools that are used now, it's very easy to do. You don't have to be a creative genius to do it. And quite often, the ugly ads can work incredibly well. All right, but like I said, always test multiple creatives per avatar. And like I was saying, I think I started with 3 creatives per avatar. So I had 5 avatars, 3 creatives each gives me 15 different creatives, right? Okay, and then to point out, your ad is literally just a hook. We're not doing the selling in the ad, okay? We want to do the selling, well, the VSL is going to do the selling for us, right? All right, step 5. Landing pages. I always want to have 2 landing pages in rotation at any one time. I think this is so important and quite often so underutilized. The amount of people, even big affiliates, that don't test landers, it's actually quite shocking. Like, this is one thing that I do from the start all the time. I always have 2 landers in rotation. This is why a tracker is essential. Not only to track properly, not only to sort of get that conversion API sort of figured out, but also to be able to rotate landers and rotate offers as well. But we're testing angles and styles. We're not testing colors. Right? This is a big thing. Like, I'm not bothered about the color of the button, right? I'm testing the angle of the actual lander. In example of a story lander, you might test a transformation story versus scientific proof, right? As an example. It needs to be simple, fast, mobile friendly. I think for me, out of the landing pages I've tested, I haven't tested many landing page tools recently, but Convertri is still the one that I usually use. I've got a link to it below. Convertri is what I use. It's just easily, for me, the most easy to use, but also the most drag and drop. All the other certain drag and drop landing page builders really are not drag and drop. You're sort of stuck to wherever they say the element goes, where Convertri you can actually drag and drop. Lovable is cool as well, by the way. So these new AI tools, I think Lovable. There's another one called, beginning with a C. I can't remember it. Cursor, something like that maybe, where you can sort of input it. Lovable's amazing, by the way. But I like to have a bit more control, like as in where I can put stuff. And Convertri works for me. So and it's fast and looks great on mobile. All right, and then pro tip, don't get stuck on design tweaks. Like, we're not looking for fancy colors or font changes or anything like that. Test angles or lander types. That's what I meant by styles. Type of lander. So quiz versus advertorial. Advertorial versus story lander. Story lander versus splash page, right? All different styles or types. Don't get bogged down testing button colors, right? I would rather test a lander type. What's going to work better, a quiz or an advertorial? Once I determine which is going to work better, I'm then going to test the angles of the advertorial or the first question of the quiz or the headline of the quiz. I'm doing changes like that. I'm not testing the color scheme. Okay? Step 6, launch your test campaign. And we live by this motto, prove it or kill it. Okay? So we launch our campaign. Now, I recommend that you start with a 10x payout budget. This is your initial testing budget. So if your payout is $60, okay, that's going to be your average payout. Then you would start with $600 as your initial testing budget. And how long you spread that over is completely up to you. If you're brand new to this and you literally only have $600 in your account ready to test, then you might want to spread this over 2 weeks until you first get paid, right? And then obviously reinvest that money from your payout back into more ads. Or you might already have, thousands of dollars set aside, and the $600 is going to be tested within the next, 1, 2, or 3 days. Completely up to you. There's no right or wrong to this. I personally like to spread it over a few days because I want to get a feel for the offer. I don't want to make decisions based off one day of data because I just might have got a really good day. Quite often, your new campaign can get a really good day, low hanging fruit, and then it can sort of falter off a little bit. So I just want to be mindful of that. So I prefer to test over 3 days. So with this might mean I split it into $200 per day. Now, if I start seeing promise early, so if I start seeing an ad that crushes, then I might start ramping it up a little bit, right? But usually if things are quite mediocre or nothing too exciting, I'm going to spread it over 3 days. All right, so going back to our main metric of EPC, we know if our EPC is going to be, $3 in the example that I shared before of the offer that I ran and tested. You might allow this a little bit. And obviously we have to take into account, we have a landing page in the middle of it as well. But usually anything over $2 cost per click wise isn't going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. So for me, I'm going to trim this ad, right? After $10 spent. And again, this changes depending on how aggressive I'm being, depending what else is running. But, quite often, it's just going to be too much for me to sort of allow this to run. So I'll trim it, just being aggressive early and just trying to find what shows promise early. This is the whole point. So pro tip, testing isn't about profit, okay? You've got to think of it, and I know you've heard this before, you're buying data, you're investing in data to find out which avatars, which creatives, which landers, but more specifically, whether the offer cuts it or not, okay? That's really what we're trying to do here. Now, how you structure your ads, completely up to you. I haven't mentioned anything about the structure of the ads, by the way, because you could ask media buyers, 1,000 media buyers, how they structure their ads. You'll get 1,000 different answers. There's no right or wrong way. You can do ABO, micro budgets, which I would probably, if you're new to this, would start with. So have one ABO campaign, have one ad set per, depending on your budget, per avatar. So if you were testing 5 avatars, I'd have 5 ad sets. And let's say you were going to test $100 per day for the next 6 days. Then I would have the 5 avatars, 5 ad sets, 3 creatives per avatar inside of that ad set, and my ad set set to $20 per day. So 5 ad sets times $20 would be $100 per day, and I would let it run for, however many days to stack up my initial testing budget, right? That's what I do. I trim ads depending on whether they're performing well or not performing, so the budget can then flow through to the other ads in that ad set. That would be one way of doing it, right? But there's 1,000,001 ways of doing it. You could test with 1-1-1. So you could test one CBO campaign, one ad set, one ad, right? Remember, we've got 15 creatives. If we do 5 avatars with 3 creatives each avatar, then we have 15 individual ads. So if you were doing 1-1-1, you'd have 15 campaigns. Now, going back to it, how much budget do you need? Well, you have to work that out yourself. Like, I can't tell you your budget because I have no idea what's in your bank account. I don't know how much you can afford, right? So that completely depends on you. Like I said, I like to test 10x payout. I like to test for 3 days. So, if you want to follow something like that, that allows you to be like, well, I've got $600, so that means $200 per day is what I need to test. If I'm going to run 15 individual CBOs or 15 individual ad sets, how much is $200 divided by 15? I would potentially say that that's going to be I don't really want to be below $20 per ad set. Okay, so you'd have to take that into account as well if you were going to follow what I did. But there's so many ways. You could test everything in a CBO. You could test with bid caps. You could test with whatever you wanted to do. I personally think for people starting out with lower budgets, a micro budget of $20 minimum per day per ad set is a good place to start. Okay. All right. Let's go on to step 7 as we wind it up, the last 2 steps. So step 7 is we optimize and scale. So we're using this proved scale framework, right? So we've tested our ads. We've ran for 3 days, let's say, and we're looking for ads that have 3+ sales, okay? These are early winners. They're not winners because there's nowhere near enough data, right? So we're not confirming this as a winner, but it's an early winner, right? We could call it a premature winner, right? Now, what I want to do here is I want to move that early winner into the prove phase. So what I do is, let's say it's Avatar 2, Creative 1. I'm going to duplicate the Avatar 2 ad set. I'm going to delete any other ads in there. So there's literally just Creative 1 inside that ad set. And I'm going to triple the budget. So if my budget was initially $20, I'm going to move it to $60. If my budget was initially $100, I'm going to move it to $300, right? Now this phase is called prove phase because we're trying to prove that same creative and avatar at a higher budget. Now you could, if you wanted to, move faster, 5x the budget. You could 10x the budget if you wanted to, right? There's nothing wrong with doing that. For me, I usually stick with a triple because I'm usually finding, let's say out of the 15 creatives, maybe I've got 5. Right? Now, also 5 that have at least 3+ sales. I'm also usually spending a little bit more than $20 per day on an ad set. Let's say I'm spending $50 per day on an ad set. Well, now I'm going to have 5 new ad sets at $150 per day. Times 5, it's $750, right? So now I've got $750 of new spend coming into this, right? So you just need to be mindful again, okay? Don't go too early. Don't explode your budget too much because again, we're still in the early days of the campaign. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, right? Because that's how you end up in the hole. Of course, if the signs are there and you want to push and you feel like you can push, then push. But just be aware that, at this stage, we're still early in the campaign. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, which is why this prove phase is really important. Now, the idea is in the prove phase is if it holds profit and the performance, is good. So obviously the CPA is most likely going to increase. The ROI is probably going to decrease. By the way, what I didn't say here is this 3+ sales. We want to make sure we've got good ROI. We're not, we don't want to move an ad to prove that's got 3 sales, but the negative, right? Ideally, we want 3+ sales. We want good EPC, remember, high in EPC as possible. And ideally, we want to be like 70% plus ROI, okay? That allows us to sort of know when we increase budget, naturally ROI decreases. So then we at least know we've got margin, right? So we move into prove, and then everything that holds profit and maintains performance, we graduate into scale. Okay, and this is where we can really pour gas on the fire, right? We can really pour some more money into it. So pro tip, everyone wants to scale overnight, me included, and you can, but only if your ad survives the prove phase. This is the whole point, and this is where I see a lot of people go wrong, is, they get 1 or 2 sales on an ad at $20 per day, and then they move it into a CBO at $2,000 a day, and then they wonder what happened to it. And it's like, well, maybe that ad just isn't cut out to perform at such a high budget. Maybe that ad is just a bottom feeder that just picks up the low-hanging fruit. And what we want to do and what you need to do to scale is you need to find the ads that really cater to the broad market. This is why avatars are really important, because if we can find ads that speak to a certain segment of the market, they can really scale heavy, right? So we want to talk to if we were looking at Eugene Schwartz's market awareness stages, we really want to be talking to people in the problem aware sort of area and even the unaware area. That's where the ultimate scales opened up. If we were to break it down into that, right? So again, really important. And this is why I like the prove phase, because it sort of allows me to sort of test the ad at a slightly higher budget. I've not gone crazy, but it's slightly higher, 3x. And then once I know that it's working, then I can scale it, right? And how I would scale it usually is I would find winners. And so at this point now we're looking usually that we've got a winning ad. And a winning ad for me would be 10+ sales within my target CPA, right? Good ROAS, good EPCs. I would move winners into a CBO at a higher budget. And if I had enough data, I would start manual bids. Right? I'm a big advocate of manual bids. I like both cost per result and bid cap. I find right now, most success for me is with cost per result. And I usually bid maybe, let's think, maybe 1.5x my target CPA. So if my target CPA is $30, right, I'm going to bid 45 as my cost per result. That's usually where I'm seeing the best results. And obviously it changes, right? And it depends on how much data you have. If I only have 20 sales inside of the ad account, I might not have enough data to start manual bidding. But this is why I'm looking at, right? My scaling is ultimately how do we spend more money without breaking everything, right? And I like to have those guardrails with the bid caps, with the cost per result bidding, and bigger budgets, right? Okay, so I'm not going to go too far into scaling with this, but, it's really important that we sort of prove the ads, in my opinion, before we start scaling. All right, let's look at step 8, finally, just under an hour. And this is how we really start ramping it up. So at this point, you've easily got $1,000 plus per day. You find the right offer, you find the right avatars, you find the right creatives with those avatars, and then you can really start ramping things up. And it's quite easy to take an offer from, a few $100s a day to we saw one of my students hit $400 in his first day with this, one of the private offers that we've got in Ad Profits, which is insane. So now, we rinse and repeat. And how do we do that? So once we've got the proven system, we can stack new offers, right? So an easy way of scaling. This depends on where you're at, right? For beginners, people with less experience, I think scale one offer at a time. For those that have a team, maybe you've got multiple media buyers, then a really good way is to start stacking new offers, right? Stack more private offers. So you offer 1 that's pumping away maybe 4 or 5K a day. You've got offer 2 that's crushing 5 figures a day. You've got offer 3 that you've just started. You've just got it to $1,000 a day. Now you've got all of these little sort of a portfolio of campaigns and offers. You have to have a system to do this, by the way. You need a team as well. It's really difficult to scale multiple offers with one person because scaling one offer can take a lot of time, right? Scaling 2, you've just doubled the workload. Scaling 3 offers, mistakes start to happen. So you need a team. But proven systems, stack new offers, always testing new things. So in your existing campaign that you've got to $1,000 a day, bring in new iterations of winners. So avatar 1's working. Okay, well, let's try this different style of creative. You always want to be bringing in new tests. I like to have a 90-10 split. So 90% of my budget is going towards proving and scaling. 10% is going towards testing new things. So new things could be iterations of winners, which is usually where you'd want to start. And then also the testing completely new concepts, completely new avatars. Okay, so now let's bring in avatar 6, now avatar 7, avatar 8, while still running and testing iterations of avatar 1 and avatar 2 or whatever's worked for you, right? So it's a continuous cycle that never ends. You always want to be testing. Same with the landing page. You always want to be testing the landing page as well. Never settle for a control. There's always a way to try and beat it. All right, let's have a look what else we have here. So then we reinvest profits, we build redundancy. So what I mean by that is, we want to build out the system with multiple BMs, backups, credit cards, credit lines. Like now you want to really expand. If you're solely reliant on one business manager, create more, buy more, rent more, whatever you need to do, right? New ad accounts. You can quite easily scale into new ad accounts. That's how you can squeeze more juice out of the offer. Also, you want to diversify across business managers because if everything's in one business manager and Facebook decides to disable the business manager, lights out, right? So you need to have backups. You need to have diversification. And obviously credit lines, credit cards really help stack up with some nice bonuses as well. So pro tip, 1K a day isn't one lucky campaign. It's a system. Build the machine, then duplicate it endlessly. And this is all it's about, is just rinse and repeat. Once you find that first winning campaign, scale it, keep new tests coming in, but also build out. Don't just get stuck on that because when that offer dies, which it will, that offer will die, might be weeks, could be months, but it will die out, okay? And if you don't have anything to replace it with, then you're back to square one. So I do always like to have some kind of, other campaign running, other offer running. All right, there's the 8 steps. So to recap, step 1, pick a killer offer. My advice is private. That's where the low-hanging fruit is, the most reward, the biggest reward. So if you've already got leverage, affiliate managers, existing connections, that's the best place to ask. Outside of that, get inside of a mastermind, a community. Not a plug for Ad Profits, but if you want to, then feel free to. Digital offers, don't sleep on them, right? I think we see a massive uptick in digital offers on ClickBank and alike over the next 6 to 12 months. Step 2, avatars, testing avatars, angles, if you want to call it angles. But this is one of the best things to do if you really want to unlock scale, is to find avatars, right? Testing avatars you can take an offer that's saturated, by the way, and scale it by just hitting a completely new avatar, a new demographic, a new segment of the market that hasn't been targeted before. It's a really good way to scale or make money from saturated offers. I'm not saying to do that. I still think private offers or newer offers are better. But that chance is there. Step 3, craft story-based ad copy. Emotions first, compliance second. Step 4, scroll stopping creatives. Excuse me. Even if you've got no creative skill like me, you can still whip up basic creatives. Ugly ads work. Don't be put off by it. ChatGPT can whip up decent images. Flux, Kling, all of these places can whip up images and also transform images into video. Google VO can whip up fucking insane videos, right? Arcads, Creatify can give you a talking head. HeyGen, Systemize, or whatever it's called, can all do, or Synthesia, sorry, can all do that thing. Now, I'm not a big fan of those two because they have a little bit more compliance issues, but they're all there. Ad copy, can be Claude, ChatGPT. There's no excuse now. There really is no excuse, like for a media buyer to not be able to at least come up with basic creative concepts. Like if you can't, then, and I really am the least creative person, but I can still whip up ads that crush out at, $4 or $5 EPCs, convert crazy high. It's not because I'm skilled, but it's more to do with, the fact that I'm able to weave that avatar and that angle in. I think that's more what it is. And you could even actually argue that the actual thing is being able to pick the right offer in the first place, right? Landing pages, always testing landers, testing campaign, prove it or kill it, optimizing scale what works, right? And then rinse and repeat. And that's it. All right, so we're just over an hour. I hope this has offered some value. Please let me know in the comments if this is valuable. A little bit of a different one, reading from the Google Doc. It's not really a big thing of mine, but I think it's the easiest way to sort of lay out these steps. So please let me know if you've got any value. Obviously, if you're new to the channel, subscribe and like the video if you want to see more of this. And if you have any ideas for upcoming topics and content, please drop them below. I'd love to hear what you want to see. Gives me ideas to create as well. And then aside from that, if you do want to get inside of Ad Profits, if you do want to get access to private offers, I have a list of private offers that I'm lining up to test with the whole goal of bringing them and making them available for Ad Profits members. Then hit me up on Instagram. You can go through to my Instagram below. You'll see it in the description. My Instagram, ThomasOwen27. You can visit me there. Send me a message. I don't bite. We can have a good chat. We can see if this is going to work for you. If it's an affordability thing, because obviously to join, it costs money, we can work something out. I'm sure we can. Okay. So if you are interested in joining Ad Profits, visit me on Instagram, send me a DM, and we'll discuss whether it's suitable or not. Again, thank you for watching. Can't wait to hear from you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.